Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick, and it's time for this week's One Last Thing. And as you may remember from last week or from talking about it some this offseason, we have a rotating co-host role this year. There's going to be a pair alternating here. Brad McGowan is on tonight. Sean Asher is was on the first one. But Brad, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Ken. I am just so excited for this season. I'm really excited to be doing this podcast with you guys. It's been great collaborating with you and Sean on ideas. We miss Slava. We appreciate him blazing the trail, and hopefully we can keep the momentum going.
All right. That'd be a very good thing if we could. So, what we're going to talk about tonight is our biggest concerns in a countdown mode. So, last week we had the positive side of this coin, and Sean and I went over what are all the reasons why the Ravens might get over the hump. This is more reasons to enlarge the hump, that the hump is larger than we thought. You're going to start with your third biggest concern.
Yeah, so you have been soliciting concerns all throughout, the last couple weeks, and so I've listened to a couple of the different concerns. We wanted to make sure that we didn't really belabor some of the concerns that have already been raised. Personally, my favorite one was the one that you recently did with Jim Zip Code, where you talked
Yeah.
about our inability to actually enjoy the season. So I will say I am very excited. To start my biggest concerns, I'm going to start with a weakness and an inability the Ravens have shown in the Lamar era, beating press and man coverage. This is a topic, it's a little bit harder to quantify. However, I did a podcast as a concern on this topic last offseason going into the season and expressed concern that the Ravens wouldn't be able to beat press and man coverage. And the reason that I brought this up is I think some of the most noteworthy losses, specifically in the playoffs, are games where the Ravens get dictated to rather than being able to dictate tempo or strategy to their opponents. And something that is very common is teams will blitz them far more than normal, and they will play a version of man or press coverage. And the Ravens have shown an inability to beat that oftentimes. Going into last season, one of the statistics I cited was that Flowers, their top receiver, was in the 35th percentile against press and man coverage in 23. He actually improved that last season and he moved up into the 65th percentile, which isn't great, but it's much better than he had been. So my hope is that as Bateman and Flowers continue to grow and produce, and Lamar continues to just get better and better every year, that this will become less and less of a challenge. So if we face this in the playoffs, we'll be able to overcome it.
It's a big risk, of course, to play any kind of man coverage or any kind of press coverage in particular. If you get up in the receiver's face with Lamar Jackson at quarterback and he manages to extend a play against you, you could get beat for a really big play. And it's one of the things about that I think plays in the Ravens' favor about this. I probably don't see that as big a problem as you do, but what you're saying is absolutely correct, is that the Ravens have not had a good ability to adjust going back to the 40-0 blitz game against Miami, which is the last game that Lamar lost by 2 scores. And plenty of other times where, in Kansas City put the game in the hands of their 3 very talented cornerbacks to get over to win the AFC Championship game in Baltimore. It has been a problem. I certainly acknowledge that.
Yeah, I think as a theme, you will see that mine sort of increase into, an overall theme of postseason inability to get over the hump. So this feeds into that. I don't think it's as big of a problem in the regular season. In the regular season, they have such a margin for error and they dominate so much that I just don't think a lot of teams are equipped to do this. It really rears its head in the playoffs.
This is part of the problem with expectations for this team is everybody's giving them a ticket to the postseason right away. They've got a good chance to make the playoffs. It's not a sure thing.
Good point.
And yeah, expectations are so high that no one can now think positively of the fact that the Ravens make the playoffs at all. Of course you did. You have Lamar Jackson. We play the toughest division in football, or one of the toughest, along with the NFC North. Yeah, there's a lot of things about that I just don't agree with. All right, I'll go with my number 3 concern, and that is a fall off in tight end production. Now they've got nowhere to go but down. It's kind of like the Ravens' expectations. You can there's no way they can do anything but fall short of them in the end, or win the Super Bowl, or fall short. But the tight end production, the last 2 years, tight ends have had 30 touchdowns and 1 interception, a passer rating throwing to them of 143.5. It's it's an unbelievable standard to set. They start this season, of course, without Isaiah Likely. We don't know how long he's going to be out. There are indications he might be back sooner rather than later by the fact that they kept him on the active roster for the initial games. It does create an inactive for them. It also meant that they lost the ability to kick the can down the road and keep a Dellinger, say, in addition on offense by having Likely out, or keep Ali and have Likely out, but then also keep a different player, whether that's an offense or defensive player. They could have done, but that was a little frustrating. Likely looked fantastic in camp. He was stretching to pull the ball in, both one-handed with both arms at times, which was remarkable. I think he'll be good when he returns, provided that the injury does not linger, and we don't know about that. Andrews is a year older. He's coming off one of his most productive seasons. He seems to still be Lamar's go-to guy in camp. I still think there is a regression to the mean that will probably occur here at some point. The Ravens are very well set up between the complex motions they run and having Lamar Jackson to manipulate inside linebackers, and in particular have their tight ends take advantage of that situation. I still think if I had to pick something, Likely's injury causing a fall off in tight end production would be it.
Yeah, that's certainly they're facing a bit of an uphill battle. I totally agree with you about Likely being ready to break out this year. We've talked in the offseason often about some of the key free agents the Ravens have upcoming after this season, and Likely is one of the most critical, especially now that Hamilton has been signed, I think, for the Ravens to be able to bring back. He's had terrific chemistry with Lamar, and his catch radius is astonishing. I am concerned. I think it is a good sign that they kept him off injured reserve to start the season. However, in 2023, Marlon Humphrey went in for a routine check. They said he needed foot surgery. It was no big deal. He was kept off the IR list. And I was actually on the sidelines of the field week 1. I had a field pass before that game, saw him running around and hugging the team, and he didn't come back until week 6 and was not right all season. So I hope the same fate doesn't befall Likely. For Andrews, it's the year after he was injured, so perhaps he's going to be even more explosive. He had a terrific second half of the season, but again, he's getting older. So
he had the car crash, of course, last year
right
in camp, and that he
Yeah,
wasn't the same player in week 1 of last year anyway.
definitely. Yeah. So hopefully, though, with the depth they have at receiver now and bringing in Hopkins, again, Flowers and Bateman getting another year, some of the exciting young receivers we have, plus Keaton Mitchell, even if we have a little drop off at tight end, they'll be well equipped to handle it.
All right, let's hear your next one.
Okay, so my next one is really centered around turnovers. The turnover differential, particularly in the postseason, has been a bugaboo during the Lamar era. However, I think, save the 2018-2019 run where Humphrey was punching the ball out on a regular basis, they really haven't had the ability to create turnovers in critical moments on defense the way that they did, for example, during the Ray Lewis and Ed Reed eras.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, we are spoiled by the defensive dominance that the team had during that time frame in the early 2000s, but in the playoffs, it has especially become a problem as, it seems like the team gets behind early, presses a bit, forces mistake and creates mistakes of their own, but they're unable to create turnovers defensively to make up for that. And so, something that I would really like to see during the regular season is that a couple of the now borderline elite defensive players that we have, Hamilton, Roquan, perhaps, Matabike, some of these guys can start actually forcing turnovers as opposed to just, getting off the field on third downs. I would love to see a bit more turnover creation. Uh, yeah, I mean, turnovers tend to be a stat that is varies year to year, but those early, that was a hallmark of the early 2000s Ravens.
Yeah. I mean, the game had more turnovers in it back then. One of the things in looking at Ed Reed's interception rates is to go back and look at interception percentage, as a percentage of all passes. And you'll notice interceptions per game much, much higher in the 50s. The interceptions were basically used as punts a lot of the time. People would throw a 40-yard pass on third down because it was everybody as good as a punt most of the time, even if it was intercepted. I think this group, in terms of the 25 Ravens, a few things are working in its favor for it to be better than 24. For starters, they were a triple count defense in 23. Okay. So they led the league in turnovers that year. They've got some big time addition by subtraction, getting rid of Jackson and Williams at the safety spot. That should create more opportunities for turnovers. They've drafted for turnovers in particular with Starks and Green. I think are both guys who can generate some. So that's a positive. I think that in general, having a better secondary is going to put you in position for more coverage sacks and also some more late and desperate throws. So, some good opportunities, I think, to improve that turnover rate.
Yeah, I agree. And we're probably not going to know for sure whether they have a better turnover differential in the playoffs, should they make the playoffs as we established, until they get there. So,
all right, let's see. That was your number two.
That was my two.
Time for my number two. Okay, offensive line depth is it for me? I'm concerned, and I wasn't, and I didn't think I would be. And then we had the waiver wire Wednesday incidents, along with the final roster decisions being what they were. I think the Ravens looked at this situation and said, "Hey, we're going to be happy if we retain." I'm getting some feedback from you, by the way, Brad. So let's see if we can diagnose that. But it's okay. In the case of regather myself here. Yeah, the waiver wire Wednesday. So they made some cuts. They cut Dellinger and they cut Dalcourt, both of whom are people who could really help their offensive line in general. And then they thought probably we can get them back in the practice squad, or at the worst, we can get one back on the practice squad. They didn't get Dellinger back because he decided he would leave for greener pastures, which is Cleveland in this case. Good luck with that, by the way, Garrett. We wish you the best in Cleveland. And Dalcourt is not signed yet, which indicates to me that the Ravens obviously didn't like him as much as Penning, which shocks me because I can't figure out why, with additional versatility, he wouldn't be more valuable than either Penning or Samac. But looking back at the offensive line depth as a problem, the root of it comes with Vincent and the fact that they have 4 pure tackles on the team. That limits them in terms of how they can deploy themselves on game day. And essentially, all 5 of their other players need to be active every week, or they have to dip into the practice squad for a player like Samac or Penning, who is not very good. And it's not what I'd be eager to see if I were the Ravens.
It was disappointing that they weren't able to keep some of their younger interior depth through to the practice squad. I thought it was a little bit surprising that Dellinger signed in Cleveland. I think Baltimore has such a good track record of drafting and developing late round interior linemen that if I really wanted to make a career, it's a great place to stick around, much better than Cleveland. That being said, I think, you made the point about Vincent being on the roster, and we've talked a lot this summer around how this is effectively a redshirt year.
Mm-hmm.
You've noted that he played much better these last 2 games than we could have anticipated. And I am curious if the Ravens think there is a chance he gets on the field and he can not fall off the table.
Well, there's a couple issues with that. The first is that he's the 4th pure tackle. So you can't really have 4 pure tackles and 4 interior linemen on any given Sunday. So somebody's got to get hurt for him to have value, which is okay. Then he backs up your getting your feedback again here. Sorry about this. Then he backs you up again at IOL. Sorry, at offensive tackle, but he doesn't back up the IOL. So the other guy that they have who might be back is Emory Jones. And Emory Jones may be a guard. He may be a tackle. He may be the swing guy they really need. But the problem with Emory Jones is that he's going to be starting. Whenever he comes back, week 5, week 8, week 10, whatever it is, he's just going to be, starting this ramp up to being playing. And with every week that passes, I think it increases the chance that the Ravens' desire is to NFI him for the year, whether they and Jones can agree that that's the right course of action. And they may have to come to a financial arrangement with Jones. I'm not sure what it would be, but they're going to want to NFI him for the entire year at some point, because there's just going to be a limited amount he could do to help them this year.
Yeah, his injury, it really is unfortunate at this point. And even if he were to come back, he's had no time in camp. He's had no time, even for starting at rookie. He wasn't at rookie minicamp. He wasn't at OTAs. He wasn't able to get involved with the team at all on the field. So trusting that he could come in and spell someone that was injured is a tall task. I'd feel much more comfortable with one of the guys that showed in the preseason. Then again, I guess from my perspective, they have really been successful in developing these later round guys. They seem to know what they're doing with the back end of the roster like this. It's not that they've always made the best decision, but it seems like they're in a good spot with the folks that they have starting, and we just have to hope that they can sustain through the season, I guess.
Yeah, we used to have a saying at our company: "Hope is not a strategy." So, but anyway, I agree with you. There is a certain amount of luck involved particularly in injuries on an annual basis, that they're going to need to have some good luck, and they've had it the last 2 years and they haven't been able to capitalize on it, which is really the problem. Let's go to your top element.
Yeah, so my top concern this year is, are we going to see improved attention to detail? And I think this to me is probably what I want to see most, that we haven't seen as much the past couple years, that I believe is one of the things that rears its head in the playoffs. Last year, they were one of the top penalized teams in the league. They've spent a lot of time in the offseason working on the snap count to try and get rid of those pre-snap penalties, but there were still a lot of post-snap penalties, a lot of penalties in the secondary that were very critical in critical moments. You know, and what I am wondering is, the team during the Lamar era, when Lamar is clicking, they've had, I think the 19, 23, and 24 teams are top 11 DVOA teams of all time since they've started doing that tracking. They've had such a margin for error during the regular season, they can sustain a decent amount of sloppiness and still be a very successful team. But I'm worried that in the playoffs, that really comes back to bite them. During the regular season, I think that shows up in penalties. I think that shows up in the times that they don't really have a precision passing attack. I take that back. I'm not saying that I think that's possibly something we could see during the regular season that would require more discipline. I think also some of the special team and coverage lapses that we've seen the last couple years that seem uncharacteristic for this kind of team, they could be just different things that have indicated that they don't have the attention to detail during the regular season, that potentially bites them in the rear when they do get to the playoffs. So I'd love to see them clean up some of those things. And it seems like all of the talk in camp is about how we're stacking the little things. Everything matters. And so I'd really love to see them come out on fire.
There's probably about 5 different things I could respond to here, but I do think the Ravens are highly cognizant of what you're saying, and they're making changes to fix it in each case. So just to, pick on a few. Cornerbacks who can't find the ball in the air are something that will get you a lot of DPIs. Getting rid of Brandon Stevens should help with the DPIs. Getting rid of the safeties who hurt them for the first 10 games of last year should really help the DPIs, because you've got help over the top now in a lot of these cases. They've done a lot of practicing, and this is one of the things I really liked about Corey Bullock in camp, about the coaching seems to be different on IDPs to get them to stop from happening. That's illegally downfield on a pass. Corey Bullock seems to go out 1 yard and then go horizontally across the line of scrimmage, and he's actually looking for that ball to come out. That's first of all, that's exactly the way I'd want it coached. Get him the most possible advantage, which is supposed to be at 1 yard, and then have him looking back at the quarterback and wait for that ball to come out, and then go downfield. Do whatever you can as a blocker. If you don't get anything, it's not that bad a loss. If you do get something, it's a big gain. The false start stuff is an enormous additional thing to discuss. I think it's actually a positive for the Ravens this year, is that they're going to accept a few more false start penalties and try and control the line of scrimmage, cadence, pre-snap direction of the offense in a way that will really help them. They should have, the opponents should be having a few more penalties, slow out of the sprinters' blocks in terms of the pass rush, and also in a good position to give some things away the longer you hold cadence at the line of scrimmage. That was certainly a characteristic of the Patriots teams and the Colts teams when they did it a lot. So I'm optimistic about it. It will undoubtedly result in a few more penalties, but a few more penalties is all right. At some point, there's a break off where it's not really all right anymore. But it could easily be 10 to 15% more penalties and not a problem at all.
Yeah. I think the thing that I'm concerned about is more how much they are practicing and paying attention to the details and striving to be great at everything. And sometimes that results in making mistakes. Those are totally fine. It is, how are we taking away from that prepares them for the postseason? Again, like, it prepares them for these critical moments. I just think, I was rewatching in preparation for this. I was rewatching the Houston game last year, which was the Christmas Day game, and they had a penalty in that game, and the announcers talked about the Ravens were the second highest penalized team in the league. And for a team as good as Baltimore is, and for the coaching that they have, and for this, just the excellent players, that's too much. We shouldn't have that many penalties. But again, like, they were so dominant last year down the stretch that it didn't really matter. And then in the playoffs, sorry, we're picking nits here. We're trying to find things true that are really concerned about. To your point, like, this is the during the Lamar era, these have been among the best regular season teams the league has seen, and we should be grateful just watching. But part of what we do is worry and look for things to focus on.
Okay, I want to say this. There are no gimme putts during this season. Okay, there are a bunch of NFL quality teams out there. The Ravens need to win every single regular season game they can, particularly these early season games that have enormous tiebreaker implications. They can't afford to lose them, and so putting off, getting everything right until the playoffs is not a working strategy. They have to be good enough during the regular season. And then they have to also be good enough during the postseason, both. But coasting on that probably should not have been something that's worked against good teams. They have a great record against good teams, so maybe there's just counter evidence to that. But I want to see them be as intentional about their practice as they claim to be and as they seem to be. The whole set and snap drills. Ben Solak, came to camp and had a comment about that. He's never seen the drill before. I didn't know that it even had a specific name to it. So I came up with the set and snap drills. They don't even wear their helmets. They just, run in, get the play in the huddle, get the line of scrimmage as quickly as possible, run their motion, get their snap off, and get off the ball as quickly as possible on both sides. And so they're looking for both sides to get off the ball quickly and be able to anticipate. They'll face tough cadences on defense, and on offense, they'll certainly have instances. They run it sometimes with a coach running around as the slot corner or overhang player, where he's moving the line of scrimmage, showing blitz, that he's moving back, and he's doing certain things to try and get Lamar or whoever the quarterback is on that side of the field to change the call at the line of scrimmage. So it's extremely well done in terms of how they practice this segment. I just say, they've had a lot of false starts in practice. They've committed to the more complex cadence. I think it's got a chance to work. but it's not by far not the only thing you're talking about in terms of attention to detail. If I were to add one more, it'd be they have way too many roughing the passer penalties specifically, and it really neutralized a lot of the value of Nnamdi Madubuike's great year last year, because he had 4 roughing the passer penalties. Well, that just kills you in terms of what it does to a defense. You're turning, positive potential drive ending plays into big time drive extender and expected point adders that you just can't accept.
Absolutely. I want the Ravens forcing their opponents into the mistakes.
Yeah.
I want to see that consistently.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, forcing them either by score, by game circumstances, by their own talent level, whatever it might be.
Right,
yeah.
right.
With you entirely. All right, let me move to my top item, which is cornerback health. The Ravens took a big risk, and they let JAD go in a year where I think he actually could have helped the team as the 5th corner. They're going into week 1. Alexander, hasn't practiced since August 9th, I think it is. Awuzie has been off and on in terms of practice. They've had other corners have been hurt, although Humphrey, I think, has been healthy. I can't remember Humphrey missing a day of practice this summer, so that at least is good. And I also can't remember Wiggins missing a day of practice other than his ejection in the Washington Commanders joint practice. But it's been a rough number 3 and number 4 cornerback health group. I'm not entirely convinced that Tampa's ready to play. If he's the number 5 cornerback, Keon Martin, I think, would be fine if you want to put him in the slot. But and that involves some other pieces moving around, like Humphrey moving back to the outside. But I do kind of fear that they don't have enough depth at cornerback, despite the fact that people go into the season and think, well, look at who they've got as their 3rd and 4th cornerbacks, and they are good. I mean, Awuzie is a great priced player. Alexander is a right player, right price, a guy who brings real turnover potential to the defense, but he only brings that if he's on the field. And he's been off the field now for almost a month. And it will be approximately 1 month on Sunday or 4 weeks anyway, that he's been off the field, and that's too long. So hopefully he's back. Hopefully it's all leading up to week 1 and being ready for that game. But it's pretty clear to me they're going to have to manage the snap count between the 2 A's, Alexander and Awuzie, for pretty much the whole season. They may have to rotate them in, rotate them out, which probably means a player like Keon Martin or like TJ Tampa is actually going to see some playing time.
This was one of my major concerns as well. When we shared notes ahead of time, it was top on your list. So, I entirely agree with this point. I've been listening to lots of preview podcasts getting ready for the season, whether it's focused on the entire league or in Baltimore, and everyone seems to be penciling in the Ravens secondary as one of the top secondaries, one of the top cornerback rooms specifically. And to your point, we're relying on 2 guys, Awuzie and Alexander, that have barely been on the field in camp. When they've looked good. We had 2 rookies go down with disastrous knee injuries early on in camp. Granted, Longerbeam and Kone were 6th round picks, but they had looked pretty good. And so, Tampa's looked okay in the preseason. He's a little bit Brandon Stevens-esque. Unfortunately, I was rewatching the 23 AFC title game, and where we lost to the Chiefs, and I was just noticing how often Mahomes was picking on Stevens in coverage, and he had tight coverage, but he just couldn't make a play on the ball. And in the playoffs, the good quarterbacks will find your weakness, and that's critical. So we're hoping for health is not, again, it's not a strategy. It's
I want to say this again here. I wish people would stop saying in the playoffs in every freaking thing we have talked about. I really wish they would stop it. Yes, all things are magnified in the playoffs. Every single freaking thing is magnified in the playoffs. But the Ravens need to get through this regular season, and they need to get it through in a position where they're playing home games against good teams in the playoffs, which is absolutely critical. And to do that, they're going to have to win during the regular season.
Right. As I was saying it, I tried to catch myself and say, and in big games against big quarterbacks.
All right. All right.
My
Well, fair enough.
apologies. I'm just thinking about, yeah, I'm just, I totally, I understand entirely. This is, and one of the things that we didn't talk about is their early season schedule is going to be incredibly tough.
Yeah.
And they might come out of the first 6 games 3-3, and we're just hoping they get to the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, 3-3, while bad, would not be a disaster given the schedule that they're facing, but it would be a little bit of a hole to dig out of, and it probably means they don't get the 1 or the 2 seed. If they come out 4-2 and they've got at least one win against Buffalo or Kansas City, then I think they've got a good chance at the 1 or the 2 seed still. So that will really be the teller. If they can beat them both and they go 3-3, that might be enough.
Yeah,
but that's kind of unlikely, given the various outcomes that occur. But anyway,
agreed.
Brad, it's a pleasure talking football. At some points, it doesn't seem like this because I'm really getting tired of the playoff only narrative is the only thing that matters for this team when this team needs to play well during the regular season to set themselves up for the playoffs. But I really do appreciate talking football with you. You came up with a great
it's funny. It is funny hearing you say that after listening to your pod with Jim talking about how hard it is to enjoy the success of the team because we're just worried about what's going to happen. And for the first time I can remember as a fan, I don't know, maybe I went to enough therapy where now I don't feel like a nervous Nelly anymore. I'm just really excited to see this team. I'm really excited to see some of these young players. They have so many guys. Like, I can't wait to see Wiggins on the field in year 2. We haven't seen him at all. I can't wait to see Keaton on the field, like in a real game. Like, I'm just so excited. And it doesn't mean that they're going to walk out and have a 59-10 game like they did in 19 against Miami in week 1. I don't know. I just feel not that I expect that I expect they will be in the playoffs because they're a good team, but it's definitely not guaranteed. I just feel, I'm just like looking forward to this season in a way that I haven't in a while without the anxiety I've had in a while.
Okay. Well, that's good. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Sure. I'm on X now at MC Bradley.
McBradley. There he is.
Yeah.
All right. Other folks out there, if you want to talk football during the season on a film study short, scheduling opportunities are limited, but please hit me up with a DM on Twitter. Please, as always, tell one more person about this show, like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. We appreciate you all very much. If you have questions for One Last Thing or for Friday Morning GM, use #FilmStudy mailbag. For Bradley, this is Ken saying goodbye. We'll talk to you 2 weeks from now with Bradley on One Last Thing.